HARK, we are here. It is time for yet another episode of Regroup Phase. In today's episode, spoiler season is here, and it has exploded all over the Star Wars Unlimited community. Before we get into any specifics about this, I want y'all to take a second to go down in the description below and click the first link that's there. It's a link to a music video it's just a song. Basically, you don't even have to watch it, just listen to it. And it's from a guy named Arnold T101, who's a Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes YouTuber, content creator, whatever you want to call him. He's a really cool dude. He makes a lot of fun little EDM music mixes. This song that I've put in the description below represents this entire set of previews. Not the entire set, but the majority of the previews. So pause the video, go check that out, then come back and we'll go through all of these lovely previews. We've got a crap ton of previews, a lot of previews. And then we also have a stream recap to go over about where a ton of these previews came from. So without any further ado, after listening to that song, boom, let's get right into these previews. Our first card in an absolutely tremendous amount of previews this week comes from the Unlimited FFG Twitter account. And it is our first non-starter leader, and the design is very interesting. So we're going to jump into this, and then we're going to jump into the other previews. But our previews are going to be ordered similar to what they were in the past, but I'm going to group a theme together towards the end of the preview section. So be prepared for what that's going to be. But let's start off with Bo-Katan Preview, Princess and Exile. Bo-Katan is an aggression heroism leader. She is a Mandalorian. Her ability is action exhaust this leader. If you attack with a Mandalorian unit this phase, deal 1 damage to a unit. She has an epic action. If you control 6 resources, you can deploy the leader as a 4/7. She is number 12 out of 262 and a rare in Shadows of the Galaxy SHD. Her unit side is our 6 cost aggression heroism Bo-Katan Preview, Princess and Exile ground leader unit, 4/7 Mandalorian. On attack, you may deal 1 damage to a unit. If you attacked with another Mandalorian unit this phase, you may deal 1 damage to a unit. It may be the same unit or a different unit. Bo-Katan is critical mass of Mandalorians attacking in concert in order to be able to do stuff. I do hope that either cunning, aggression, or vigilance or heroism gets a card that is similar to Rebel Assault that allows you to attack with multiple Mandalorians. It doesn't even need to attack on with additional power, although that would be nice. But as long as it allows you to attack with 2 or more Mandalorians in a single activation, that would be very helpful, similar to how Rebel Assault is very helpful to Rebels and specifically to Leia. But our front side leader ability just needs you to attack with any Mandalorian. So if you have a Mandalorian on the board, you're going to be able to attack with that Mandalorian. If you have, and then when you flip her, she attacks, and as long as another one has attacked before, similar to Boba Fett's, as long as something has left play, you get to deal effectively 2 damage with the on attack. But it is in 2 packets. So one fun thing about Bo-Katan's ability is that on attack, you deal 1 damage to a unit, which can ping a shield off of a unit. And then you can deal the 2nd damage, because again, 2 separate packets, to that unit that had the shield on it. So, and because it's on attack, it's before the actual attack damage. So there's a lot of different things you can do with this leader in order to be able to do a lot of damage with the Mandalorians that you have available to you. Now, it was specifically stated to us in the stream that came after this preview that there will be villainous Mandalorians. So I expect Gar Saxon, I expect the Mandalorian Super Commandos, I expect Pre Vizsla, something in Death Watch, something in those things. There is going to be an example of another Mandalorian, or a couple other Mandalorians that are heroism or at least non-morality aspected. So Bo-Katan specifically is going to be our hero Mandalorian rep in aggression, but it'll be interesting to see what else happens. The Mandalorian himself is more upgrade focused, but you can dive into doing multiple Mandalorian strategies with him because he himself is a Mandalorian. And this is the way, which we previewed before, searches for Mandalorians and or upgrades. So there's a lot of combination of things that can be done here. But Bo-Katan is a very interesting leader. 6 resource flip for a 4/7 we've kind of seen is not that great, but I think the Mandalorian strategies in this set might push this specific leader to be able to do cool things in the future. Our next big batch of previews comes by way of the FFG live stream that was aired on May 1st to help celebrate Star Wars Day coming up on the 4th, which will have passed as of the airing of this video. We got a ton of previews. There were, I believe, 12 specifically in the actual stream itself. And then we have other creator previews as well that have been given to those creators to showcase. But let's get started with this first card. We have the Clone Deserter. This is a 1-cost command heroism ground unit. 2 power, 3 health, fringe clone, restore 1, bounty, draw a card. This is a common, number 95 out of 262 in SHD. So we're going to have a lot of fringe-based clones, and you'll see a couple more of these down the line. We've already seen at least one clone in Crosshair, who is an Imperial Trooper and a clone, but we're going to see a couple more fringe-based characters. There is a couple episodes of the Clone Wars, and definitely an episode of Bad Batch that deals with clone deserters who are just trying to live their life away from the Grand Army of the Republic, and this is what that type of character represents. And because they are deserters, you do see that you have a bounty. So being a 2/3 for 1, much like the Cartel Turncoat, there has to be a drawback to having something that powerful. And the drawback, again, is your opponent gets to draw a card. Now, from what I have gathered from the stream, there are going to be at least one of these for each style aspect. So we've already seen the cunning and the command from what I was told earlier, and I have to go over the stream again, which will happen after I do some of these previews, but you'll get all the information for the stream towards the end. There will be the vigilance and the aggression ones will be villainy. So that should be interesting to see what the bounties are for those bad guys. As it stands, cheapo command heroism units. If you're doing a clone strategy, which we'll see a little bit later, this might be actually very helpful to you in order to keep damage off your base. You just have to be careful about how these cards getting defeated. It allows your opponents to draw cards, which allows them an opportunity to get more answers to the things that you are doing on your board. So this is a cool card. Love the art. Fantastic stuff. Our next card is a flat aggression card that deals with bounties. This is the Covetous Rivals, a 6-cost aggression only ground unit, 5 power, 5 health bounty hunter, grit. When played and on attack, you may deal 2 damage to a unit with bounty. This is a common, number 171 out of 262 in SHD. Bounty hunters gotta hunt bounties, right? So your bounty hunters need to have the ability to do things against cards that have bounties. So when played, you deal your 2 damage against a bounty, and hopefully you can pick that bounty up. On attack, if there's another bounty card that's on the board, you can deal 2 damage to it before your attack hits in order to be able to do stuff. And then you have grit, which makes this effectively a 5/5 to start with, but as it takes more damage, it gains more attack. So you could end up seeing this as a total 9/1 towards the very end of its life, unless you throw some upgrades on it, like experience tokens or anything that gives it +1/+1 or +2/+2, so on and so forth. It's a fun little card. It does work very well with something like ECL. You'd get this trigger twice if you did that, or a timely intervention, which again is going to be another card that's going to be in constant conversation with Energy Conversion Lab because of that ambush it does give things. This is a fun card. Bounty hunter strategies look to be pretty neat. I love the gaggle of bounty hunters here that are trying to take somebody down. It's very interesting stuff. Love this card. Should be pretty interesting going forward. Our next card is another rep from Solo, but this is our first interaction with Crimson Dawn in terms of cards. We have here the First Light, headquarters of the Crimson Dawn. This is Dryden Voss's ship. This is a 7-cost Vigilance Villainy space unit, 4 power, 7 health, underworld vehicle transport. It has grit. Each other friendly non-leader unit gains grit. And then this card has a smuggle cost for 7 vigilance and villainy. Deal 4 damage to a friendly unit as an additional cost to be able to smuggle this card. This is a rare, number 36 out of 262 in SHD. The idea behind this card is at a 7-cost 4/7, it's a little under the power curve, but because it has grit, you can gain extra damage based upon how much damage this has. And as we've said multiple times, Vigilance likes its big butts. That's a big old butt. It having grit is one thing. It being able to give your other friendly units grit, especially if you have a board full of damaged units, this is like the top level Krennic enabler, and it's in Krennic's colors. So you don't even have to go out of his normal aspect pairing in order to be able to do that. If you want to run Vigilance Command, First Light works perfectly. If you want to run Vigilance Aggression, First Light works perfectly. If you want to run Vigi, First Light works perfectly. The smuggle cost for this, to be able to deploy it for the same cost as its own cost, is really good. The only downside is that you have to deal 4 damage to a friendly unit, which could potentially defeat one of your own units. You could use it on something that is already going to, you know it's going to die in the next activation anyway, so just get it off the board so that your opponent can't use that resource to do something else against you. Or you can use this ability to set up another big grit unit. If you've got an Avenger on the board, you can throw this down, deal 4 damage to the Avenger, and now all of a sudden Avenger has 4 additional power because First Light gives that other unit grit. This is an incredible card and is going to be very scary, realistically, unless you can remove it off the board. The best way to do that would be to either just vanquish it if you're playing Vigilance, or try to get it to the point where you can use something like Vigilance itself, or take down, or even just slam units against it. It's got 7 health, so it's going to be difficult to take down, but there are some strategies that can be done to remove it from the board, or just keep exhausting it if you're in Cunning. That might be the best bet. No Good to Me Dead. You can Bamboozle, you can Asteroid Sanctuary, all kinds of other stuff. Just try to keep it off its legs so that way it can't continue to deal damage to it, but you still have to deal with the other units that also have grit. And this, like I said, this is a very scary inclusion in Krennic, and I'm kind of excited for that, honestly. Our next card is actually a very unexpected inclusion in Shadows of the Galaxy. We have here Gentle Giant. This is a 6 cost Vigilance Heroism ground unit. 2 power, 8 health Wookiee. It has grit. So like Chewie, it's going to gain a bunch of damage to be able to pump out a bunch of damage. But here's the interesting thing. On attack, you may heal damage from another unit equal to the damage on this unit. This is a common number 48 out of 262 in SHD. So as this gains more damage, it's kind of like Redemption, but instead of it being one specific instance of it, you could potentially do it multiple times as long as you can keep this safe. So you pile a little bit of damage on this and then just keep using its on attack ability to heal your other units. Great to heal damage off leaders, great to heal damage off of big things that are going to have a lot of damage on it. A combination of having this guy out ready to attack already with some damage on him, Redemption in to pull the damage off your base into the Gentle Giant attack to remove the damage off of Redemption is actually a pretty decent move. It is 6 cost, so it's very expensive, but that's how you pay for that big butt. I think what this card wants to do is provide a basis of strategy for more Wookiees, but as it stands right now, a Vigilance Heroism unit could potentially use this to just try to stave off the damage that's coming at them in little chunks while continuing to be able to hit that extra damage on the attack with your grit, because you're going to be putting damage on this unit. You're going to try to remove opposing units with the attacks and then continue to pile up the damage to be able to heal damage off of your other units while pressuring your opponent with a big Gentle Giant. Our next character is a fairly popular character from a very unpopular movie. We have L337 Droid Revolutionary. This is a 2 cost Cunning Heroism ground unit. She's 2 power, 2 health, Underworld droid. When played, you may rescue a captured card. If you don't, give a shield token to this unit. She has a smuggle cost of 4 Cunning Heroism. She's an uncommon, 197 out of 262 in SHD. L3 is here to lead the droids to victory, to rescue her contemporaries and start the revolution that eventually ends up putting her in control of the hyperdrive on the Millennium Falcon. Being able to rescue captured cards, but also if there are no captured cards on the board, just give a shield token to this unit so it can continue to pressure your opponent for 2 costs is pretty cool. I imagine this is probably going to end up being used as a sideboard tech against capture decks, which there might be a couple of them that are fairly popular because of that smuggle cost. But even still, a 2/2 with a shield, this is the answer to Crafty Smuggler, effectively. So I think L3 is going to be a very interesting design. Heroism, Cunning kind of needed something like this to balance out pressure that Crafty Smuggler can put into the field, even though it can also run Crafty Smuggler, but you're mainly seeing that in the Boba decks that are running Cunning villainy. I like this. Underworld Droid, Underworld keyword, been making me very happy. There's some other Underworld stuff that's really cool, but L3 is here to try to help you reclaim your things, or at least protect herself from damage. Our next card is basically fan fiction. We have here Makulunki. I'm sure I pronounced that incorrectly. I don't care. 1 cost Cunning Underworld Trick Event. Return a friendly non-leader underworld unit to its owner's hand. If you do, deal 3 damage to a unit. This is a common, number 2 to 29 out of 262 in SHD. This is one of Danny's favorite cards, and I can understand why it's a very powerful effect. The reason why I say fan fiction, this art showcases, now that I'm actually looking at it, it's not necessarily a dodge, but it definitely showcases Greedo getting a shot off, even though he never actually did, because as everybody knows, Han shot first. There's no debating this. There's no revisionist history. Han shot first. Speaking of the actual card itself, though, this is quite good, and it works really well with someone like Greedo, because for 1 cost, you can pull Greedo back to your hand, because it does require underworld units, and then deal 3 damage to a unit, and then you still should have enough resources to be able to put the unit back on the board. My favorite trick with this, though, is a combination of either Bib Fortuna and this card, or Jabba the Hutt and this card. Bib Fortuna can tap himself to allow you to do this, and then you pull Bib back to your hand to be able to play him later if you need. Or with Jabba, Jabba can pull this off the top of your deck because it is a trick event, but also makes it free because he reduces the event costs of events by 1. So being able to play something like this card for free is absolutely, can potentially be backbreaking, especially if you're trying to refresh something that has an on-play effect or has a ton of damage that you want to bring it back to your hand. Very cool card, very useful in decks that probably don't need the help. But with more Underworld cards coming out in this set, hopefully it's not going to be super abusable by anything that would already abuse it as it stands right now. Boba. Our next card is a very interesting card, and it's probably getting ready to hype some people that are very excited about a character that's normally associated with this thing. We have here the Pirate Battle Tank, popularly used by Hondo, Onaika's pirate gang, Weequay pirate gang. 6 costs, command villainy ground units, 4 power, 6 health, underworld vehicle tank. It has Sentinel, which is fantastic, and it smuggles for 7+ aspects. This is a common, number 89 out of 262 in SHD. A 6 cost 4/6 with Sentinel, not the best spread, but maybe, and it may end up being very useful for a deck that just needs the Sentinel in order to be able to fend off attacks, so on and so forth, right? Its smuggle only being 1 above its normal cost is actually pretty good. It means that you can effectively play him. You're still spending 1 additional resource, but you're not losing too much because it is a card coming from your resource row, not from your hand. But being a pirate battle tank, it can do some damage, it can protect your board, and it's not easy to clear off with something like Takedown because it does have that 6 health. So Vanquish is pretty much the only thing that's going to pop it off the board immediately, or Emperor Palpatine. But crazy expensive cards aside, Pirate Battle Tank is a competent card, and I hope to see a bunch of it in Hondo decks, which I'm hoping to see Hondo in the next couple of weeks. Our next card is an absolutely ridiculous cunning event. This might be a pattern. We have here Relentless Pursuit, a 3 cost, cunning only tactic event. Choose a friendly unit. It captures an enemy non-leader unit that costs the same or less than it. If the friendly unit is a bounty hunter, give it a shield token. This is a common, number 232 in SHD. If you have a bounty hunter on the board, you capture a unit that costs less than that. You don't necessarily need a bounty hunter for this to be a good card or playable or for it to be usable, but you want to target your bounty hunters so you can get those shields. The obvious character that utilizes this to the most efficient extent is going to be Boba Fett. And this card is nuts with Boba Fett because putting a shield token on that leader just unbalances the way that he's able to push out damage and control the opponent's board, because not only does this give Boba a shield, it also removes a unit from play, which capturing does, which means that when Boba Fett attacks, you can get your resources back. Now, thankfully, this is a 3 cost and not a 2 cost. If it was a 2 cost, it would absolutely be busted, and I don't think anything could beat Boba Fett at that point with this card in the deck, plus more cards that are coming. Putting all that aside, this is great bounty hunter support. I love seeing cards that specifically support traits in the game, and I hope that continues because traits are really fun and they allow theme players the ability to do cool theme things, whereas just play good stuffs isn't as fun to those level of players, including myself. Our next card is a bounty payoff. We have here Reputable Hunter, a 3 cost command only ground unit, 3 power, 4 health bounty hunter. If an enemy unit has a bounty, this unit costs 1 less to play. This is a common, number 117 out of 262 in SHD. Side note before we even get into the card itself, this little rifle here is a DLT-20. One of my favorite rifles because it was one of the earlier things you could use in Star Wars Galaxies, but it's also really good in Star Wars Legion. I believe my Iden Versio's kit out with this rifle specifically. And then also this was in Battlefront 2, the EA version, and was one of the rifles that I specifically used while playing Iden Versio in that game. Anyway, y'all don't care about blast rifles, you care about cards. This card at 3 cost is passable. It's got a bigger butt to protect it from enemy units that are going to be coming into play with 3 power that normally would be defeatable, but because it has 4 health, it's not. The bounty payoff, however, is if your opponent has a bounty, this comes in at 2, which means if your opponent plays one of those 1-cost bounty units, or more than one of them, this guy comes in the same round. So another overstated unit comes in undercosted with literally no downside. The downside, your opponent's downside became your upside, and that's just nuts. This card is also going to be bonkers and limited because you're going to see a lot of bounty things come into play when the available pool of units is just stuff you're drawing from set 2. And there's a lot of bounty cards that are coming in at common, including this one. This guy's nuts. He's going to be very playable. We'll see how playable once the full set is revealed. I think this might be one of the underrated picks of the set, though. Our next card is a capture event. This is Take Captive, a 3-cost command-only tactic event. A friendly unit captures an enemy non-leader unit in the same arena. This is a common, number 131 out of 262 in SHD. Bonus points for Obi-Wan Kenobi being captured by Count Dooku and the rest of the Geonosians on Geonosis. This is a 3-cost, remove your opponent's unit from the board. Simple as that. Yes, they can be rescued if your opponent defeats the unit that captured it, but this is the type of removal that works really well between exhausting, which keeps the unit on the board and still makes it remaining a threat, and straight up defeating unit, which pulls the unit off the board completely. Take Captive is one of those, I'm going to remove your unit temporarily, but I have enough advantage to be able to capitalize on something like that. Capture payoffs really like this, obviously, because it's a card that you just capture something and then it sees it being captured. It sees it removing play. This is actually another card that goes really good in Boba Fett because it's removing one of your opponent's units from play, which gives you back those different things. So effectively, this could be a 2-cost card. You still need 3 to play it, but then you'd exhaust your Boba and then bot. Bounty Hunters, gonna love this thing. Anything that wants to take advantage of bounties that are on your opponent's side of the board are also going to enjoy Take Captive. This is a very interesting card. This is going to be, again, much like the last card, very strong and limited, but it'll be interesting to see how players adapt to utilizing the capture mechanic to gain advantage to be able to defeat their opponents. And I'm excited for that. Our next 2 cards here are Mandalorian cards. They were cards that I was expecting to come, but actually not in the aspects that I was originally thinking they were going to be. So let's get started. We have here Clan Challengers, a 5-cost aggression-only ground unit, 3 power, 6 health, Mandalorian Trooper, Raid 3. When this unit is upgraded, it gains Overwhelm while it's upgraded. This is a common, number 169 out of 262 in SHD. Clan Challengers is the type of Mandalorian unit that wants to be able to attack and can continue attacking depending on what other cards you have in your deck. Somebody pointed out that this card is a very good target for keep fighting and aggression because it is 3 power. It doesn't gain any other power except on attack. So it doesn't lose that caveat of those 2 cards that require 3 power or less because it remains at 3 power unless it's attacking. If you do end up upgrading this unit with, say, a shield, now you have something that's also giving it Overwhelm, which means you can deal more damage to your opponent's bases. Otherwise, if you're upgrading it with experience tokens or any of the other things that we might see coming up, I'm assuming we're going to see blasters, jetpacks, flamethrowers, things like that. Those can go on these Mandalorians, and you lose the ability to be able to ready them with effects like the Grand Inquisitor specifically, or keep fighting or aggression, but you do get that extra power stacked behind your Overwhelm, which is very good. I love this unit. Clan Challengers like this are, I believe these are Clan Ren specifically, which it tracks with the fact that Sabine is aggression, which gives me hope that we might see an Ursa and Tristan Ren in aggression as well in this set, but we'll see what ends up happening. Sliding right into our next card from the stream, we have Ketsu Onyo, Old Friend. 2-cost aggression heroism ground units, a 3/2 Mandalorian underworld bounty hunter with Saboteur, which is great. When this unit deals combat damage to a base, you may defeat an upgrade that costs 2 or less. She's an uncommon number 147 out of 262 in SHD. Another great example of a Mandalorian in aggression. Because she has Saboteur, she could ignore all the shields and all the opponent's sentinels and be able to just deal combat damage into a base, and is another upgrade defeater. This is actually almost assuredly going to go into, if not the main deck, at least the sideboard of aggression heroism decks that want to make sure that they can defeat the opponent's upgrades, because upgrades will matter with set 2. We know this, we've seen it, but we've also been told it as of the stream, and we're going to see more upgrades. We just haven't necessarily seen them yet. Ketsu herself being a Mandalorian goes really well with Bo-Katan because she's a cheap Mandalorian that can attack. You can use Bo's effect on her leader side, or if you have them both out as units, Ketsu can attack first, Bo-Katan can attack second, and then you have that extra damage that's able to ping things and get rid of the things that you want to be able to get rid of. I like this card a lot. It is in aggression, which means a lot of the Mandalorians we've seen so far, including Sabine from set 1 and the Disabling Fang Fighter, are set into aggression. So I'm hoping we do get more Mandalorians. We have seen one Mandalorian in Vigilance, and obviously we have 2 Mandalorians in Vigilance. We will also have the Mandalorian himself, who is cunning, but as a leader. I'm hoping we get some other Mandalorians in those aspects, so that way it's not just guild hunting for the Mandalorian in the starter deck set. But otherwise, this card's fantastic. We have seen her ship, but the generic version of her ship, I wonder if we'll see the Shadowcaster itself. Who knows? That as it stands, Ketsu Onyo, really good card, 2-cost 3/2. You can't really go wrong with that. We have one more Mandalorian to show. This preview came by way of Maindeck over on YouTube. Maindeck Dan and Maindeck Jason, I believe, previewed 2 cards. We'll go over their other card later when it comes relevant to a specific group that we're going to talk about. But this one is a Mandalorian, and she is quite good. We have a Night Owl Skirmisher. This is a 3-cost aggression heroism ground unit, 4 power, 3 health, so Echo-based defender stats, Mandalorian Trooper, and she has Smuggle 5 aggression heroism. This is a common number 149 out of 262 in SHD. Again, aggression heroism, a lot of the Night Owl characters are probably going to end up being aggression, which means if we do see Koska Reeves and Axe Woves, they are probably also going to be aggression cards, which is great for aggression, not necessarily for the deck that I'm specifically trying to play, but I will definitely have a Bo-Katan deck on standby, ready to go when it comes time. I just have different goals for what I want to do for myself and the channel. But besides that, 3-cost 4/3, you just go. It's a Mandalorian, it just goes. But with the Smuggle ability, it's overcosted for stats, but again, it doesn't cost a card in hand. And there are other things that might actually end up making some of these Smuggle cards really good. And we might see something with a Mandalorian effect that gives its smuggled cards extra abilities, either an upgrade when they come out, or extra attack stats when they come out, or come out ready, depending on what happens. I have to believe there's something there for some of these smuggled cards outside of just being their cost plus aspects plus 2. As it stands though, 3-cost 4/3, fantastic. Mandalorian Trooper, love it. I love it. You love to see it. Mandalorians, I love Mandalorians. This is how you get theme players into games, people. You find the niche that they like and you pander. I'm doing a dangerous thing in splitting up creator previews, but we have one more non-theme preview, and this one comes by way of IRebelDestiny and their YouTube channel, link in the description below. It's an interesting card. We have here Cripple Authority, a 2-cost aggression heroism trick event. Draw a card. Each opponent who controls more resources than you discards a card from their hand. This is an uncommon, number 156 out of 262 in SHD. Cripple Authority might be the card that replaces Heroic Sacrifice in the sideboard of aggression decks, specifically because yes, you pay 1 more for the draw card, but it also allows you to strip cards from control players' hands because you don't really want to go much higher than 6 or 7 resources as you're playing the cards, even with Smuggle. But the fact that your control opponents and even mid-range opponents want to keep going 7, 8, 9, 10 resources so they can do the same thing or play their bigger things like Avenger and Devastator, so on and so forth. Cripple Authority allows you to just strip a card out of your opponent's hand while also drawing a card of your own with no real restriction outside of what you're already doing. I like this card a lot. I think it's a really good card. The art on here is very interesting. Surprised Imperial Officers. I'm not sure what this specifically references, but it should be interesting anyway. It's a great card, at least on the sideboard. Gonna be fantastic. It'll be interesting to see how aggression heroism players fit these tools that we've seen in this episode into their decks going forward. If this wasn't enough, we have a batch of previews here that have a very specific theme that will become very evident by the leader we're going to see at the next card. What's cool about the way that I've chosen to do this and the way that FFG chose to do this, they showcased the leader and they gave some creators in the space previews that tie back into this leader. So we'll get to each individual creator that revealed cards with these things, but let's get into this leader. We have here Hunter, Outcast Sergeant of the Bad Batch, Command Heroism, Fringe Clone. Big sad there's no Bad Batch key trait, but the leader text will make it clear as to why they chose to go this direction instead. Action. 1 resource, exhaust the leader. Reveal a resource you control. If it shares a name with a friendly unique unit, return the resource to its owner's hand and put the top card of your deck into play as a resource. As an epic action, if you control 7 or more resources, you deploy the leader, who is a 5/8. Hunter is a rare, number 9 out of 262 in SHD. On the other side, we have our 7 cost Hunter Outcast Sergeant, Command Heroism, 5 power, 8 health, French Clone. He has Overwhelm, which is fantastic. On attack, you may reveal a resource you control. If it shares a name with a friendly unique unit, return the resource to its owner's hand and put the top card of your deck into play as a resource. Remember, all cards that come into play exhausted. So it's not giving you extra resources, it's still exhausted, but you could reveal an exhausted resource to get something back. The idea behind Hunter is you're playing lots of unique units in your deck and multiple copies of them, so that way you can get extras of, say, their when played abilities, or you just need to make sure that you have backups when you know your opponent's going to defeat something on your side of the board, and you're keeping the amount of resources you would normally have anyway. So Hunter's actual face side allows you to exhaust the resource you're going to showcase, so you don't go resource negative for revealing what you need to reveal. And then at the leader side, not necessarily the same thing, but at least it's an on attack, so you can do other things with Hunter. I see the potential here, but I can't actually decide if this is better or worse than ignore the aspect penalties of quote unquote bad batch characters that you control. At least it's an ability that can see use. I think my biggest problem for Hunter is he's a 7 drop. Mind you, he's got 5/8, so he's got the same stats as Vader, and he's got Overwhelm, which is really cool. But the reason why Vader is so good for 7 is because he has the ability to, on his front side, deal damage based upon the villainy cards that you've played, and on his unit side, deal damage to opposing units on attack. I like the fact that Hunter has Overwhelm, and hopefully the clone synergies do really push into allowing you to get extra output for your clones that you're playing. We've already seen Crosshair, who kind of does his own thing. We've got a couple of other clones that are coming up that might be interesting to play. But I'm worried that Hunter doesn't have enough oomph behind him to justify his flip cost. We'll see. He is command, so you can play resupply to try to get him earlier. You just have to hope that the things that you're doing are going to be appropriate for getting Hunter into play and keeping yourself alive. I don't necessarily see this as a mid-range deck, but it could become a successful mid-range deck. Our next card is the second IRebelDestiny Preview, again, linked in the description below, and is a very good starting strategy for the character we just saw. We have here Omega, part of the squad. She is a 2-cost Cunning Heroism ground unit. She's 2 power, 2 health, Fringe Clone. Ignore the aspect penalty on the first clone unit you play each round. When played, you can search the top 5 cards of your deck for a clone card, reveal it, and draw it. She is a rare, number 198 out of 262 in SHD. Omega is the exact type of character that I wished Mon Mothma had been, because it's an additional effect on top of the draw cards, right? I think Mon Mothma being a 2-cost 1/3 pull 1 rebel doesn't do enough to justify her inclusion in decks, even if you need those extra cards. But Omega also being able to allow you to ignore the aspect penalty on the first clone unit you play each round, i.e. Crosshair and probably Wrecker. It's not as good as Hera's just flat out ignore Spectre aspect penalties that's on her leader card, but it's good enough as I believe this would be a great 3 of inclusion. This might be a very good card going into set 3 with Twilight of the Republic, where we're going to get a lot more clones, but as it stands right now, I believe a portion of the strategy for Hunter's clone deck effectively. Our next card is a Batcher. It is the second preview from the main deck, and this card is nuts. It's just flat out nuts. This is Tech, Source of Insight. This is a 3-cost, heroism only, ground unit. 2 power, 5 health, fringe clone. Each friendly resource gains smuggle. The gain smuggle cost is that card's cost plus 2 and its aspect icons. Tech himself also has a smuggle cost of 4 and a heroism. This is a rare, number 248 out of 262 in SHD. Tech, clone, goes with the clone strategies. Very cool. Tech is the type of card that I think is going to be insanely abusable, given that smuggle was put on smuggled cards and costed appropriately for those cards to be able to smuggle, and previous cards that haven't been costed with smuggle in mind are now having smuggle, which means there's just some nut stuff you can do. Maindeck Dan talked about a couple strategies, surprise strike, command, but the possibilities are endless. Taking into consideration even aspect penalty, if you're off 1 aspect penalty, paying 4 for a card that your opponent was just not prepared to see means that Tech is going to be one of the strongest cards in set 2. And I think anybody not prepared for it is really missing out on how good smuggle can be when your opponent isn't expecting what's going to be smuggled. And I think those attack boosters like Rebel Assault or Surprise Strike or Precision Fire, those cards are going to be the things that will win games because people weren't expecting that to happen, especially if like you have no cards in your hand. Oh, my opponent doesn't have the ability to attack out. Cool. I'm going to smuggle in this Rebel Assault and you lose. It's nuts. Tech is nuts. Tech is absolutely nuts. I'm both excited and frightened for the future with Tech in the game. And just like that, another preview video drops as I'm recording all of these together. Roll On Gaming got 2 previews, including one very relevant Bad Batch preview to something I said earlier in this episode. So let's check that out first, and then we'll check out their second preview. Props to FFG for the release cadence that they have for previews and the theming of them together, because dropping this card was very important, specifically today as of recording, because Hunter was revealed first, and this next card, Echo, was revealed as well. We have Echo, restored, 4-cost, command heroism, ground unit, 4 power, 4 health, fringe clone, restore 2. When played, you may discard a card from your hand, give 2 experience tokens to a unit in play with the same name as the discarded card. This is an uncommon, number 99 out of 262 in SHD. As Kevin and Corbin pointed out in their video, shout out to Clone Force 99, Echo here. This turns on Hunter's ability basically by itself. Hunter allows you to pull a card from your resource row that shares a name with a unique unit you have on the board. Echo coming down can give that unique unit, when you discard the card that you have from your hand, as long as that unit survives, 2 experience tokens to be able to continue to do stuff. But even without Hunter's ability, you are running 3 copies of most of the cards in your deck, especially units. So you're going to be able to have those opportunities where you have a unique unit in your hand and you don't want to play it. You can discard it to give extra tokens onto a unit that you want to keep into play or want to be able to do extra things with. The ambush potential with this card is also really good because you can get that restore in on the attack and also potentially clear a unit on the board and use the when played to give something else experience tokens, including Echo himself. If you do ambush this card, you activate the when played first, then the ambush. The when played, you could discard another copy of Echo from your hand on to give the experience tokens to this card, and then your ambush allows you to ambush a 6/6 instead of a 4/4 into whatever it is you're trying to attack on the board. Echo is a fantastic card. I'm really excited to see the shenanigans that clones can specifically get up to. This is exciting. This is very exciting to me, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what Wrecker does, and then moving on to potentially other fringe clones that might be in the deck. We might see Gregor. We might see Rex, who knows? But specifically to point out, this is a command unit. So a lot of our batchers are probably going to be command cunning, or maybe just command as a whole, and Omega, because of her style of combat, quote unquote, is cunning specifically. So we'll see what ends up happening with the Bad Batch as a whole as we get Wrecker. Remember, Wolf, French clone, is aggression, but with Omega, you can ignore the aspect penalty of the first clone you play each round. And that's fantastic. Our next preview comes by way of the Unlimited FFG Twitter account, and it's our last ground unit member of the Bad Batch. We have here Wrecker. Boom. 6-cost aggression heroism ground unit. 7 power, 6 health, fringe clone, overwhelm. When played, you may defeat a friendly resource. If you do, deal 5 damage to a ground unit. A rare, number 154 out of 262 in SHD. ECL stays winning. Ambush on 6 cost or lower characters just wins games. Wrecker has the ability by himself to be able to clear a 5 health or less ground unit by sacrificing a resource, but in combination with one of the 2 different forms of ambush that Command has access to, you have the ability to slam Wrecker into something to do a ton of damage, either by taking a chunk of health off of something that has a large amount of health on it, and then overwhelming into it with the ambush, or just leading a 5 health or less unit off the board and preparing Wrecker for the next round to be able to wreck. If you are playing Hunter, you're likely going to want to use this on the turn you flip Hunter. So you start by flipping Hunter because you already have the 7, and then you activate your Wrecker to get him onto the board, whether that's through ECL, through timely intervention, or just playing Wrecker by himself. You don't want to sacrifice your ability to bring out Hunter because he is a 7 resource epic action flip. Wrecker coming out, being able to do things. You start your build by playing your other clones, your other Bad Batch members, leading up to being able to flip Hunter, play Wrecker, and then just control the ground arena as best you possibly can with those units. It'll be interesting to see if they bring the Marauder into play. I hope they do, because that's a really cool ship. But if not, you might have to pick up space packages of other units in order to be able to do cool things with them. Only problem I have with Wrecker is he's aggression. He fits perfectly in aggression, but it also means that if you're going to play Wrecker and you're going to play Omega, you're probably leaning more towards command cunning than you are command aggression. But given that, there are a lot of interesting options that you could play when it comes to playing Wrecker, and I think that he is going to be a fantastic finisher for decks that are looking to just push through damage and get the win off of attacks. And I think that's just a fantastic way of being able to present the biggest and burliest member of the Bad Batch. The second card given to Roll On Gaming that was previewed was another thing that I talked about earlier in terms of Mandalorians and how they're not all heroism. We have here Death Watch Loyalist, a 3-cost aggression villainy ground unit, 3 power, 3 health Mandalorian trooper, grit, and overwhelm, a common, number 136 out of 262 in Shadows of the Galaxy SHD. A lot of our Mandalorians we've seen so far have been aggression, with the exception of the Mandalorian himself, both his leader and his unit card, and Follower of the Way. So it'll be interesting to see how much divergence Mandalorians have from the aggression aspect. I personally don't want to pack aggression in with Mando himself, but if we keep getting good Mandalorians that are just aggression, I might have to. Might just have to be something that happens. Deathwatch Loyalist himself, though, 3-cost, 3/3, really good for, again, that keep fighting aggression and GI effect, Grand Inquisitor effect. But this one does have grit, which means as it takes damage, it gets more power, which means it's less useful on those abilities. But the overwhelm really does help push to the point that ability to get that damage in on your opponent's base. And I wonder if our heroism Mandalorians will be mostly raid based and our villainy Mandalorians will be mostly grit based. It'll be very interesting to see going forward. Love the art on this, fantastic. I imagine if we get Gar Saxon or Pre Vizsla, they will both be aggression cards. All that aside, I love it. I love Mandos. I love Mandalorians. There are a lot of cards this week. And this one, just another banger on top of another banger on top of another banger on top of another banger. We have more previews. This time, 2 previews, Mandalorian previews as well, from Rebel Resource. Link in the description below. It wasn't just a reveal video of the preview, it was also an interview with Joe, one of the game designers from FFG. Go check that out, please. Fantastic stuff going on. Lots of stuff being spread out. I wish it was spread out a little bit more instead of, a gigantic batch of previews dropped on Wednesday and Thursday. But 2 cards here. Let's get right into it. Our first card here is the CEO herself, Koska Reeves, Loyal Night Owl, 4-cost aggression heroism ground unit, 4 power, 5 health, Mandalorian trooper. On attack, if this unit is upgraded, you may deal 2 damage to a ground unit. She is a rare, number 150 out of 262 in SHD. Shout out to Nerd Parker over on SWDB on the Force Unlimited and over on Twitter for making the point that this is our first professional wrestler on a Star Wars Unlimited card. He likes his firsts. This is a good first. 4-cost Mandalorian with good stats, and if it's upgraded, you get to deal 2 damage to a ground unit. Mandalorians like their upgrades. There's a lot of upgrades that are going to be coming, but even still, let's say you just do either cunning or command. We already have a couple of upgrades that would be worthwhile on these. Plus, we have stuff like infiltrator skill and the hotshot laser blaster from this set. infiltrator skill from last set. And then we have Academy Training and Command. We have Snapshot Reflexes and Cunning, plus whatever else we haven't seen yet from this set. Really cool, very good art. Very happy that she is in. I'm also hoping, I did talk about this a little bit, I'm hoping Axe Woves ends up in this set as well. That would make me very happy. A completion of the main leading Night Owls, as it were. More aggression Mandalorians, but it makes sense given the trend we've seen before. Rebel Resources' next preview, while not specifically and explicitly a Mandalorian upgrade, it is an upgrade and it does have a Mandalorian on it. We have here Ruthlessness. This is a 1-cost aggression villainy upgrade. Attached unit gains when this unit attacks and defeats a unit, deal 2 damage to the defending player's base. You get +2/+0. This is an innate upgrade. It is a rare, number 143 out of 262 in SHD. So here we're starting to see the types of upgrades we're going to get for Mandalorian style characters, or just upgrades in general to the set. This isn't explicitly a Mandalorian. It doesn't have the Mandalorian trait. Because it features a Mandalorian, it's going to be tied to that. You stick this onto the Death Watch Loyalist, and you've got a 5/3 that grows, that will, if it defeats units, which you might want to do so you can get that grit going, and with the Overwhelm, you can deal extra damage to your opponent's base. There's a lot of cool space to work with Ruthlessness when it comes to upgrades in the set. I am very happy to see as many upgrade strategies and synergies as we've seen so far. This is going to be a very fun card to run in those Mandalorian villainy decks that you're going to want to be stacking your upgrades onto. Basic synergy with that Death Watch Loyalist. Unfortunately, no real synergy with Heroism because you don't really want to pay 3 for this, but in Limited, maybe it might come up. It's an interesting card though. I love this style of Mandalorian armor. It's the Mandalorian armor that most people see in general, but it is specifically the Neo Crusaders style of armor. For those of you that are familiar with KOTOR, you know what I'm talking about. If not, look it up. Fantastic card, super exciting. We'll see if there's more previews coming. Our last preview that we are going to cover this week in this insane drop of previews given to us over like a 5-day period in this beginning of spoiler season is none other than Fennic Shand, Loyal Sharpshooter. This comes to us by way of the Unlimited FFG Twitter account. This is a 7-cost cunning ground unit, 4 power, 6 health underworld. This has ambush, on attack, deal 1 damage to the defender if it's a unit for each different cost among cards in your discard pile. This is an uncommon, number 220 out of 262 in SHD. Happy to see the girl in the game. We knew she was coming. We've seen art of her, but it was super cool to actually see her get a unit. At first glance, very high cost for what she brings to the table. Much higher cost than something like Bounty Hunter Crew or Bosk, but the ability to actually knock out units that some of those other ambushers, including Han, couldn't take out, depending on what cards are in your discard pile, is actually a very compelling reason to run this. The other thing is that it is just cunning. It's not heroism, it's not villainy, so you can run this in any deck that runs cunning without having to pay an aspect penalty. I think that this is a card, because it has the innate ambush and because it does come in so late, has the ability of knocking out problematic ground units that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do so, because you can likely get on average a 3-ish extra damage, which would knock out anything with 7 health or less when you do the ambush. Now, she's not going to protect herself like Han would. She's not going to gain any extra bonuses of dealing extra damage based upon events or bringing events back like Bosk or the Bounty Hunter Gang, but this does fit a niche of being able to knock out units that other similar costed units would not be able to do so. So I do imagine this is probably going to see some amount of play in cunning decks to be able to take out problematic ground targets based upon the cards that you're going to be playing and the cards that you'll have in the discard pile. There is a case to be made that if you go up to 7 and something in you are able to get rid of something into your discard pile that has different costs each time, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 7, you're probably not going to get that every time, or even most of the time. If you get those 7 cards, this thing can deal a total of 11 damage to a single ground unit target. If you're able to clear something before the actual attack hits, Fennec doesn't take any damage back, and that is an interesting line of play for this card. Previews are finished. for this week, or at least this episode of Regroup Phase for the last week. But on May 1st, FFG Live presented to us a lot of the previews that you've seen previous to this. So we're not going to go over each individual thing. I'm just going to go over some new pieces of information that are going to be here. And then after this specific part, we're going to cover a couple pieces of art that we saw on Star Wars Day and during this stream as well. And then we're done. So Xander, Tyler, MJ, the Jean Jacket Club has arrived. That is not a joke, by the way. They were all wearing jean jackets. Xander borrowed John Leo's jean jacket to be able to participate in this, which is fantastic. As it stands at the beginning of this, Xander officially declares the beginning of preview season, which we talked about earlier, because that was 25 previews, I believe, 24 previews that I went through before getting to this part, 12 of them from this stream. One of the things they wanted to specifically go over was that there's new ways to explore the way the aspects interact in Shadows of the Galaxy without fundamentally changing each aspect identity. So we're going to see some new things, some changed things, but each style aspect is still going to have its own identity in Shadows of the Galaxy. We're going to see fewer heroism and villainy only aspected cards because Shadows of the Galaxy is mostly shades of gray. So Tyler did specifically say that there are less just villainy and just heroism cards in this set than there was set one. One of the things that Tyler pointed out to us was that grit as an effect, as a keyword, was originally slated to debut in this set 2, but they design changed that grit would debut in set 1, but we're going to see a significantly increased amount of interaction with grit in set 2, which is going to help a lot of strategies that want that grit or low attack to start and then high attack later on. We've already seen a couple of grit cards now. We'll continue to see grit cards as we go down the line. Tyler specifically calls out aggression and vigilance as the primary Mandalorian aspects. Vigilance cares about upgrades, but so does aggression, and aggression just wants to hit face. So in our previous preview of all those aggression aspected Mandalorians, we did see a lot of attacks-based things, but also a couple of them having upgrades matter on this unit type effects. So given that confirmation that most of the Mandalorians are going to be vigilance and aggression, I'm very happy to hear that we'll see more vigilance Mandalorians. We've already seen Follower of the Way previous to this, and all of these Night Owls, Clan Challengers, Death Watch people in aggression, but hopefully we'll get more of the Clan Zealots or Way Zealots, whatever you want to call them, Way Fanatics, Zealots. That's all negative, and they're not necessarily always negative, but you know what I mean. The Armorer, Paz Vizsla, those characters from the Mandalorian, should be cool seeing those down the line. MJ wanted to specifically call out that token upgrades will be very relevant to Mandalorians because they are a form of upgrade that you can play onto those units from other effects that won't necessarily cost you cards in hand. So something like applying a shield or applying an experience token in addition to another effect that will still trigger all of the upgrade stuff on the Mandalorian cards and anything else that matters to have upgrades on it. Tyler does clarify that First Light's smuggle cost, which you talked about earlier, the same play cost as a smuggle cost, but you must deal 4 damage to a unit, has to be paid before it hits the field. You cannot damage First Light as the cost for this effect. It has to be a different unit, which we talked about. That does help set up the grit thing, or at least clears a vulnerable unit off the board from your side, so your opponent can't cash in on anything that would matter to them for defeating your units specifically. Tyler also heavily implies that we're going to see a lot more Wookiee shenanigans, Chewie stonks through the roof as it stands right now. But in terms of upgrades in this set, they also wanted to make sure that there were upgrade answers. So that's where effects like Ketsu Onyo comes up, where she can defeat upgrades that cost 2 or less. We saw a couple of anti-upgrade cards in the last set with Power Failure, Disabling Fang Fighter, and Confiscate. I'm sure we'll see more in this set, and it should be very interesting going forward. There was a question clarification about smuggle specifically. Playing a smuggle for its alternate cost does not change the aspect of the card being played, i.e. Hotshot DL44 remains an aggression card for the purposes of Fighters for Freedom, even if you're deploying it for its cunning smuggle cost. One big question here that was asked was, is the power level of set 2 the same as power level of set 1? And power level is attempted to be flat across the game for the most part. There are going to be some things that are stronger, some things that are weaker for design purposes, but there are going to be quite a few strong staples in set 2, just like there were strong staples in set 1. Set 1 cards are more obviously strong, Tyler points out, and set 2 cards are weird, but can end up being just as competitive as set 1 cards once the community figures out how they all work. It'll be interesting to see how the community meta differs from the developer meta, and I think it already has for set 1. I think things have happened in set 1 that the devs weren't potentially fully invested in with their meta internally for playtesting. but without them saying anything otherwise. That's just a guesstimation on my part. Tyler confirms that there will be Vigilance and Aggression 1-cost bounty draw card units, much like the Cartel Turncoat and the Clone Deserter, but these 2 units will be Villainy. I may or may not have said that before. I'm pretty sure I said it, but I edited it. Doesn't matter. They are coming. Aggression is the bounty matters aspect when it comes to interacting with the bounty keyword itself. Tyler gave us a tip that the rare, he specifically said one of the rare aggression leaders will have a discard cards from hand theme built around them in the same section as this bounty matters thing. We've already seen the rare heroism aggression leader in Bo-Katan, so this would obviously have to be the rare villainy leader unless they put more than one rare leader for each side. Tyler answers a question here about capture. When a unit is captured, all of its counters and upgrades fall off, and when it's rescued, it comes back as a fresh unit in exhausted, obviously, because when a unit comes into play or is rescued, I guess at this point, since there are 2 different terms now, they come into play exhausted or are rescued exhausted. They enter the arena exhausted. A rescued unit is not considered played, so you will not get the when played effects. Speaking of capture, cunning and command are the capture aspects specifically. Early in design, capture.deck, which is put all the capture in a deck, was a thing, and the developers found it miserable to play against. So they reduced the amount of heavy capture strategy and payoffs to force players to do capture as a strategy and something else. This is likely where the Mandalorian starter leader comes from, where you get to do different capture things by exhausting units and using the rifle to capture those, but you still need upgrades in order to be able to exhaust the units with the Mandalorian's effect. We'll see what happens with other capture effects as it comes into play, but we have seen a couple cards as before where you either just capture a unit or, both of them are capture a unit, but you capture just any unit or capture a unit that costs less. Xander asks a question here that specifically says, what happens to a captured card if the unit that's guarding the captured unit is captured? That unit has left player, therefore you rescued the captured unit. Can you cross arena capture? The answer here is yes, as long as the card doesn't specifically say same arena. So that's a good thing. Smuggle is a keyword that is in all aspects, but it's mostly in the command aspect because command is the resource aspect and smuggle interacts with your resources. Sounds good, makes sense. We got a question here from the Garbage Rollers, shout out, talking specifically about the way that Super Laser Blast defeat all units, interacts with captured units. Tyler clarifies that Super Laser Blast kills the board, all of those units leave play, the captured units sees their guard units leave play, and then they return to play unaffected by Super Laser Blast, which actually makes a lot of sense because it is an order of operations of clear the board, that event has fully resolved, and then the mechanic comes in and flips everything back up that was captured. Can you capture your own unit? Tyler says, maybe. Not a clear answer, but probably means that at some point in time, we will be able to capture our own units. One thing that Tyler also heavily hints at in this stream is that there are cards that can reduce the smuggle cost of cards. And in combination with tech, this is going to be very, very dangerous. So we'll see how that interacts with the game moving forward. Tyler states that each set in Star Wars Unlimited should have some typal support throughout that set. If you don't understand what typal means, it's effectively the type of a unit. So Rebel, Imperial, things that have keywords that are representative of a specific strategy. This was formerly called tribal. The community as a whole in multiple games have decided to move away from the word tribal for obvious reasons, and they have come up with typal as the same way to describe that. So in set 1, our 2 big typal strategies was Rebel and Imperial. In set 2, we have Mandalorian and Underworld. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a sub-theme of clone because of all the Bad Batch stuff we've seen. Speaking of Underworld, MJ and Tyler talk about how Underworld has a lot of bouncy and blink effects, gaining advantage based upon being intangible, whether that's keeping units off the board, but being able to continuously use their when played effects or other enters effects that do things like shielded, or being able to keep shields on your unit while you can do things. All kinds of different shenanigans, tricksy shenanigans that Cunning is up to, which we've seen before, are just going to get even better in this set. And that's cool, but it also scares me. Tyler then, as one of the last things that we have here, forces the audience to spell Maclunky, which we talked about the Greedo card from the beginning, and people try. The way that you say Maclunky, you think it's going to be spelled a specific way, but John Leo, hero of the people, purveyor of jean jackets, and game developer for Star Wars Unlimited, spells out Maclunky in chat, and we get the preview. So thank you very much, John, for preventing that game from going on far longer than it should have. And we got that preview, we got all the other previews, and that is how the stream closes out. And there we are. Our final section in this incredible incredibly long but incredibly information-packed video is going to go over a couple of pieces of art that we've seen during the stream and also on FFG socials on May 4th to celebrate Star Wars Day. So let's start with the stream image. We have here the Drip Gang, the Jean Jacket Club here. And the pieces of art that we want to focus on are the two above and next to Xander. The set thing here we'll go over when I have that image later. And then these two here next to Tyler. We've already seen this image up top of a lot of the key art characters that's part of this set. But if we zoom in a little bit, we can see here that this image is a batch image. And if I remember correctly, this should be Crosshair and Echo. So this is likely going to be an event that does something with clones. You can't see it right here, but Tyler moved his head a couple times and I was able to identify that this is an image of the 5 bounty hunters, 5 or 6, that were on the deck of the Executor during Empire Strikes Back. So Bosk, Dengar, Boba Fett, Zuckuss, Forlom, IG-88, so 6 total. They're the ones that are going to be in that image, so that's probably a bounty hunter style image. Over here behind Xander, you can't really make out what this is, but I believe these are Trandoshan hunters, potentially anti-Wookiee tech. We don't know. Hi, Xander. And then right here, the big money shot for me, that is none other than Mr. Timothy Olyphant, Cobb Vanth himself, shooting off his little laser blaster with his Mandalorian Boba Fett salvaged armor on. Super excited. Can't wait to see this card. It's going to be hype. But those are the images. This is the box art, which we'll get to in here in a second. And again, Drip Gang, so on and so forth. Next, we have this specific image given to us by FFG on their socials. We get a look at the packaging for the box art, for the starter deck, for the booster box. You don't get to see exactly who's on the packs just yet, because that's probably more spoilers, but that key art again with Jabba and Dr. Aphra and Darth Maul is right here. We have the 2 mats we're going to get. The Darksaber wielding Mandalorian, and then the Rancor. We have the sleeves of the leader art for Mando and Gideon, and then art for Kylo Ren and Rey, which I believe both of these are also going to be leaders, but who knows. Then we have this image right here, which showcases a couple of leaders. We know Bo-Katan, Gideon, and Mando, but 2 leaders here that we don't know as of yet. And props to, I forget who it was that managed to blow this up, but we do get to see here that this is a Command Heroism Boba Fett, because we've seen this art before, and a Cunning Heroism Lando, which again, we've seen this art before. So those are 2 of our leaders that are going to be coming as part of this set in Command and Cunning respectively, but we don't know exactly if they're going to be rares or commons or what they're specifically going to do as part of that. But that is all the art as it stands that we have available to us. And with that, we're done. I'm done. It's Monday as of recording and editing all of this. I'm taking Tuesday off. I don't care what happens. I'm going to sleep for 12 hours because this was insane. I've been working on this video for like 15, 16 hours. Periodically throughout several different sections. I had my tournament I had to go through. I had to rewatch the stream, all kinds of other stuff, but lots of information. Super excited for Shadows of the Galaxy. I'd love it in my hands right now, please, but I know we got to wait till July 12th, and that's going to be an exciting day. The pre-releases will be July 5th, 6th, and 7th. So that should be fun to be able to do pre-releases utilizing. Hopefully they do the same structure that we can get Gideon and Mando as alternate arts in the pre-release kits to be able to use those for pre-release sealed. But who knows what's going to happen. The future is, as I constantly say, unlimited for Star Wars Unlimited. And it is exciting to be a part of this community, creating content for y'all, covering all of the different pieces of information that I could possibly grab. But with that, we are done. Thank you for joining me for this extra long video. I think in the future, if something big like this happens again, I'm going to try to break it down into a couple of videos that are over a couple of days. But without any further ado, like and comment on this video, your favorite preview that you've seen. Share this with your friends. Subscribe to this Star Wars Unlimited channel for all of your Star Wars Unlimited needs. If you would like to support me, I do have super thanks, super chat, super join, something like that. And then the memberships itself, which are available to you. But otherwise, just share the videos with your friend. Check out a previous video if you can. And I'm done. I'm tired. Oh my God, I am so tired. And with that, I will see you in the stars.